What's up everyone? In this video, we're going to be color grading some natural color profile footage from the Panasonic GH5, not using any LUTs. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, you know that I love using the natural color profile because of the quick turnaround. You get some great colors that you don't need to spend a lot of time on when grading. And normally I would be using LUTs that I already created for the natural color profile, but this time we're doing it from scratch. But I am going to put a little plug for my LUT packages. If you're new here, my name is Caleb and I've been doing freelance video production since 2012, but this channel is to help you make your own videos, whether you just started or you've been making them for a while, whether you use the GH5 or any other camera. If that's something you're interested in, make sure you hit that subscribe button. All right, so here we are in the timeline and we're gonna color grade some of this natural color profile that I shot on some client work at some adventure camps. So the very first thing that we're gonna do is go and just create a new item, and we're just gonna create a new adjustment layer. We have all the settings that we want, 1920 by 1080, and the time code is where we want it. So we just hit okay, and that's gonna give us the adjustment layer that we want. Now, if you want to save a bunch of time with the natural color profile and you don't want to spend a ton of time color grading and that type of thing, I would highly suggest go down into my description and click on the free LUT download, and that's going to give you this YouTube Punch LUT as well as the deep shadows, gold, and purple sky. But this YouTube Punch is basically what I use for all my YouTube videos, designed specifically for the natural color profile. And so if you want to save a bunch of time, just go download this and it's going to give you some really good looking natural color profile footage. So that's what that looks like. I also have a LUT store set up for you if you want to go beyond just these free downloads. I have a bunch of LUTs that you can purchase on that store. So that will save you a bunch of time when it comes to color grading, natural color profile, GH5 natural color profile footage. But that's not what we're here for. We're here to do this from scratch. So when you go to color grade the natural color profile, it's all about adding depth to the image. Now, you don't have the dynamic range that you would have with like the log profile, and some of the footage might be a little bit overly saturated. So the main thing is just adding a little bit more contrast to the image and, adjusting the colors a little bit so that it's not so saturated. And all of this is assuming that you in camera have nailed your exposure and nailed your white balance. So real quick up on the screen, I'm just going to toss the settings that I use for the natural color profile. Now, if I'm shooting an interview, that last digit I'll just take down to -1, but pretty much for any type of B-roll, this is what I'm using here. So let's just start on this first clip, and we're just going to bring up the adjustment layer here. And I'm just going to drag it so it's just covering this one clip. And so here are a few things that I always do when it comes to color grading from scratch is I'm going to adjust my curve here. So I have a little bit of room to spare down here in the shadows. And so I'm just going to take that and I'm just going to lower it a little bit here. And you can already see that that's adding depth to the image and it's already making the image look better. Now, another thing that I do, and this is already built into the LUTs that I have if you decide to go download those, but I always put just a little bit of a fade in the shadows. I don't totally know why I do that. I just feel like it maybe softens the image up a little bit and it's not so harsh of an image because, the GH5 shoots pretty sharp. Now that I'm still in the curves, another thing that I pretty much always do is I start taking down the saturation in the shadows as well. And you're going to really see a change in the image here. Now I take the saturation down maybe about halfway. So if I would go all the way down, you can see such a dramatic change in the image. I don't want to make it so dramatic. Remember, I have really good color coming out of the natural color profile, and so I want to keep some of that in here. So here's the shadows without some of that saturation in it. Now, I do that rather than going, here to the creative and just slamming down the saturation of the overall image. And when I fade it, I don't use this fade slider either. I do it in the curve. I just feel like I have just a little bit more control over it. And so while I'm actually here in the creative tab in Adobe Premiere Pro, I'm just going to bring the shadow tint down to the teal, and I'm going to take the highlight tint up to the orange. Now this is a cloudy day, so it's not going to be super teal and orange look, but I just like adding just the teal look to the shadows here, and the highlights I'll just warm up a little bit. So already you can see quite a difference in the image. So here's the first image, and there's some of the adjustments that we've made. Now, I don't know if you want to call it a cinematic look or whatever you want to call it, but I do feel like it has a little bit more of a cinema feel rather than these overly saturated colors that sometimes come out of the natural color profile. So we still have some room to work with here. So I'm actually going to go to the basic correction tab, and I'm just going to add a little bit more depth. Remember, it's all about adding depth to the image. So, we're saved up here. So I'm just going to add a little bit more contrast to it. And I'm just going to bring the shadows down just a little bit more. See how it's kind of expanding this area? Now the highlights, remember I have the highlights, there's a little bit of a clip right in here, and that's okay. We're making some sacrifices when we shoot with the natural color profile. We don't have that dynamic range. There's a little bit blown out here, but overall, it's a pretty well exposed sky, but I'm just going to bring the highlights down a little bit. And remember, that's just adding depth to the image. So it just, when you bring those highlights down, you can see just a little bit more definition in some of those clouds. So this image is very, very close to where I want it to be. I think actually that looks pretty good right there. But what I could do is just come down here and change maybe some of the hue settings. So maybe I just want to make those trees maybe just a little bit more of like a forest green look to it. So I can just bring down those yellows and greens. And that's, if I bring it up, see, it's going to be a little bit more yellow. That kind of looks like it's in the fall. But if I bring them down here, it just kind of gives it more of like a forest green look there. So, and if I want, I could even, just raise the saturation just a little bit of some of those greens. And I think that gives a really nice look. Now the luminance of this tree right here is a little bit different. So you could go in there and kind of fine tune the luminance levels of this front tree, but I really like how that one is turning out. So I really feel like it gives it a little bit more of a cinema style look. All right, so let's go to another clip here. In this one, we have a little bit more, skin tone and this orange of this guitar. And I actually think it's a Taylor guitar. I'm a Martin player, but we're gonna let it slide for this video here. That's okay. If he wants to play a Taylor, that's all right. All right, so here we have some adjustments that we're going to make with this. And again, I'm going to go to this curve, and we don't have as much room in the shadows to play with. And so we're not going to take it down too far because we don't want some of these areas right in here to start clipping. But again, I'm just going to fade up the shadows a little bit, but we do have some room up top. But here we have some clipping that might happen on his knuckles and on the, on the tuning knob right here. So we're not going to go too far with it, but we are going to take it up far enough where, like I said, it adds depth to the image. So already you can see a difference. All right, so those are on, and now I'm just going to take out some of the saturation in the shadows and just bring those down maybe about halfway. Again, you can kind of see like the dramatic change that it makes right there, see? So we don't want it to look like this, obviously. So we're just going to take out some of those shadows. Now I'm going to go into the creative tab here. And again, I'm just going to take the shadows down to more of a teal and the highlights up. Right up there. And now I'm kind of worried about these knuckles in here. So I'm actually going to go to the basic. I'm just going to bring the highlights down a little bit. I'm going to bring the contrast up. And now we're still not getting any clipping, which is good. So I have a little bit of space with the shadows that I might just bring down just a little bit right in there. Okay, so right now we see that that's quite a bit different than what we were getting. And now if I had time, I'd probably go in here, and since this is a crash course, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but I might actually just kind of play with these greens a little bit and see where I'd want those, kind of like that, those mountains, maybe just a little bit more foresty of a green in there, and maybe just even maybe just bring that saturation up in those greens just a little bit. And if we really wanted to, we could make this guitar pop. And now this is going to adjust some of the skin tones as well with these reds, but we don't want to overdo it, but maybe just having that guitar pop a little bit. And then we can already see kind of in his knuckles there that that's starting to clip just a little bit. So we don't want to take it too far, but this is such a distinguishable part of this picture that having that guitar pop a little bit might be kind of cool. All right, so here is a shot of my wife looking up at the trees. So let's just bring in the adjustment layer. And again, over and over, we're gonna play with this. Now we don't have a ton of space to play with the dark areas of the image because we don't want them to clip, especially right here under her hood. But we do have some space up here that we can just bring up the lighter parts of the image, and that already is adding some depth to the image. And then I'm just gonna fade off those shadows a little bit to soften it up. And I'm going to bring down the shadow, the darker saturation of the image. I'm gonna bring that down a little bit. Now, if you find that's bringing out too much of the saturation, just dial it down just a little bit. Usually I found about halfway works pretty well. And again, I'm just going to bring the shadows into the teal and the highlights up into the orange levels. And I would definitely spend some more time like fine tuning some of these things. This, like I said, is a crash course. So, but overall, I'm liking how this looks. Now this is a little bit yellow, maybe a little bit too yellow of an image, too warm. And so what I might do is actually just bring this back, bring the temperature back just a little bit. And now I'm kind of liking that. You see how that really has changed the image there. And so then if I want to, I can go in here and kind of change some of these levels. Like there's some greens and yellows in here. And what I can do is bring some of those down and kind of give it a more foresty look, forest green look. Don't want to overdo it. So there you see some of the changes that you can make really easily with the natural color profile. And like I said, they're not dramatic changes. They're not huge changes, but they're just little changes that really enhance the image. It's all about creating that depth and that contrast in the natural color profile image. So let's just go through these again. Here it is with the adjustments on, adjustments off, adjustments on. Next one, adjustments off, adjustments on. Just gives it a little bit more of a cinema style feel to it. Not overly saturated and kind of toned down just a little bit. So let me know down in the comments if there's anything different that you do with your natural color profile when you go to grade it. I think it'd be awesome to get some kind of conversation going about color grading the natural color profile. Now, if you have time, it'd be awesome if you stuck around, maybe watch one of these videos that's popping up on your screen right here. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.